guess we just got Champion Village and Mission Hills Ranch. That's good. All right. Thank y'all for coming out. So, spoke to Mr. Edwards for some considerable time. We went back and forth, and I think I gave him our top priorities for Mission Hills Ranch. We had met in the previous meeting, and we're pretty collective of what our top 5 priorities were for our community. About the zoning commission meeting, which was very successful, so I appreciate everyone who went out and did that. But together, I think we need to collectively have a voice combined for the city council for us to actually get this, denied. We don't want to. We want to go in there as one voice in what we're actually asking for. Things that are realistic about our expectations of this development. I think that everyone can probably say that we do want some kind of residential area that to be developed other than commercial and other than maybe some apartment complexes. I really don't want that on the west side, but if we had to make a wish, then we wish that it would be some kind of residential area that was comfortable, comparable to everything on the west side, right? Because what they're proposing for their lot size and what they propose to us and the developing communities around us, is the lot size is not even close to what our expectations were. So, talking to Mr. Edwards, I think we can actually get maybe them to grow their lot size as an option. But I'm gonna go into more depth later on with questions. I want you to be able to address it with Mr. Edwards. That your questions that you have of him, he's gonna go over this plat, maybe define some more understanding of what this means, what this pink and purple and yellow means on this map. You understand the development that's coming forward if it comes. All right. So
they don't plan to sell; those are legacy properties. But one death can change it. All right. Now, when the city designed its annexation prior to the removal of ETJ influence, they extended the city limits 300 feet into each side of the highway from their last position of like Manor and Champions all the way to Mission Hill Ranch. Mission Hill Ranch was originally established in the extraterritorial jurisdiction. That's why your roads went county. Okay. However, when you request city services...
Mr. Edwards, sorry, he's asking you to...
Okay. Not a problem. My wife said sometimes I'm too loud. So, Mission Hill Ranch was in the extraterritorial jurisdiction, meaning we ruled how it was developed, not if it could be developed. That was on the county. Okay. Then, as they requested city services, that's what required the city limits expansion at the particular time. So in that expansion, when they reviewed to all of the landowners and homeowners, they asked them in advance what zoning they wanted that extension, so it was on the record. And it was R1, single family residential. Okay. Normally, in the expansions on the east side, that first 300 feet has been commercial. You can look out 725 and all the 300 foot, all the way to Union Line is commercial. You're the only jurisdiction that put R1. Now why? Primarily because Champion on the one end and Mission Hill on the other are R1. Okay. So that explains why the application in residential is significant, because contrary to popular belief, it can't be nothing. Okay. If a landowner asks a request, or somebody who buys it asks for a request, it has to be considered. Can you turn it down every time? No, it's against state law. 3 strikes, they get the 4th. Or they can sue the city for it all. And so you have to allow something. Now, in the planning, moratorium was mentioned. So let's go through that first. Can we put a moratorium on? There's only been 2 successful moratoriums in the state of Texas in the last couple of years. And they only lasted a year, but they have to be done in 4-month increments. How can you get a moratorium? 1, no fire and safety accessible cleanly and in a reasonable amount of time. I brought the rules for you. We don't have that problem. Our response time on fire and police, especially police, is one of the fastest in the region. In fact, the report came out just 90 days ago, showed that on a crime report, a major incident, the average response time for the city and the Braunfels is under 4 minutes for the first vehicle to be on site. I can tell you, when I broke my femur 11 weeks ago, they were at my house in about 3 minutes, so the fire. So that's strike 1. You have to meet all the criteria. The second is there a higher and better use, therefore restrict that use? No. Is there a utility problem, water and sewer? Not in water. And we're going to go through some of the things that are misunderstood about water and water restriction. Currently, the city of the Braunfels uses 29,000 acre-feet of water annually. We own in excess of 52,000 acre-feet of water. And NBU has stated they're in full compliance with Senate Bill 2. Now what does that mean? Senate Bill 2 requires that the utility that services the city must have a 50-year plan. It must be implemented and updated every 5 years, and they must be able to ensure that they can deliver for that full length of time. So it's a rolling 50. Okay? Now, the reason we go into restriction early is that we're in the Edwards, Trinity, Glenrose, Guadalupe, and Comal jurisdictions of water. One of those triggers, it triggers all. So, if we're part of the SAWS flow, and it goes into restriction now, we have to go into restriction with it. We can't do it by zone. The whole city goes in, or the whole city doesn't. If the Edwards triggers, it goes in. Now, for District 3, we have been operating off the Comal Springs for a good length of time, and a part of the Trinity. Starting next year, we will be 85% Trinity water. We've drilled 5 new wells, high volume wells to handle it. The only place that we have a current shortage is how much water storage we have, and we're about 2,000 acre feet short. They've got a development plan on that. The second thing is sewer. So sewer had been denied to this area for the last 15 years, expanding anything greater than what Mission Hills has, and Champions and Manor Creek, because there was a bottleneck behind Oak Run School. The line was too small. They built the new plant. The capacity was fine. But because of that bottleneck, it wasn't going anywhere. And the NBU and the citizens were not going to pay to expand that line. Therefore, no sewer had been developed further out here for the last 15 years. A price tag was put on it of $1.5 million to cure the bottleneck. A subdivision that was approved 10 years ago on Waco Springs that was fully entitled except for letter of capacity. And that is our tool, not moratorium. Moratorium, as you see, it's got a lot of rules. You've got to meet all of them. But letter of capacity, we don't. So, the way this works is, development, the utility can say, I don't have it. And if I don't have it, I can't do anything about it. But if the developer says, well, how much do I need to write a check for? If they write it, then it moves. T-bar-M's expanding. It's already on the books. So the new subdivision on Waco and T-bar-M are working to pay the money. Yeah, now, this subdivision, whether it's this company or another one, if they develop, they will contribute into that $1.5 million. This particular development will have over $2 million in off-site development costs. Okay, so sewer capacity out of pocket and running the line that they need, including 8-inch water for fire flow. Okay, so plus $38,000 a door for impact fees. Now,
What was that? I'm sorry, 38,000 a door for what?
impact fees, water, sewer, road, park. Okay. They pay 4 fees, all right, per door. So that's the lay of the land. The city of New Braunfels has not used moratorium, and the legal department says they don't want to because it's not effective. But LOC, letter of capacity, is. It's perfectly legal, and it's controlled. Because in moratorium, you have a limitation of how long. It's not forever. Most for 4 months. You can extend them, but you have to have drastic rules to it. So that's why it's never mentioned. We had the discussion in council a year ago when it was brought up during the campaign about this, and we were read the rules and the law. That's why I brought it for you to see. Okay? So that's kind of the lay of the land, how it is. Now let me give you an example how the LOC works. Development at Navarro part of our city is in the jurisdiction of Spring Hills Water. That's on the east side. They are 7,000 acre-feet of water short for the amount of development they'd have approved. They couldn't move forward because they didn't have the letter of capacity, because they couldn't guarantee the water. And those developments on Cordova that did not have their letter of commitment have been on hold for 2 years. So instead of a moratorium being 4 months or a year, extending and proving every time, the letter of capacity rules. In another case, it was drainage on Cordova over there. The city is putting in a new unified drainage system, so they delayed some of the subdivisions because of that. All right? So that's the rule of law. All of that, we don't have the ability to say no for water and no for public safety. Yes?
Okay, that's
That's the problem.
No, that's not an overrun. That's in the Hammond Village. They have a
Yeah, but they all connect to the one point.
but it's backing up in our neighborhood.
I get
Not overrun.
That-
So my question is, if, in order for them to do this, they have to expand the sewage. Will they expand it so it does not? Are they changing the sewage through Champions Village where it backs up? And that will we find
that I can't answer, but I can answer this. Is that capacity that they have to build to is not only for them, but for future use of everything in yellow. Because if you build it to here, everybody downstream can tile. Okay.
So what you said was T-bar and someone else is saying they would be willing to
they're already discussing the pay in to get the LOCs for it.
Okay, and it is Steve Barnum and who is it?
It's Waco Springs development. It's about from the corner of Waco Springs and 46, go down 4 parcels, and you'll find it there.
Okay, so it's not all the way to Delaware.
Yeah, and it's I think they approved for 55-foot wide lot.
I remember that item, Lee. I remember, and I voted no for that because I didn't think 50-foot lots fit in this area and behind Manor Creek. But it passed because I was only one of 2 votes. But
The issue is
the Waco Springs development. Are you talking about that the Texas home, that one?
Yeah.
The one that's right behind Manor.
Yeah.
We just passed that one.
Right.
Was it like
Right, but
3 or
it's
4
a
months
ridge.
ago?
That's on its density.
Right.
Okay.
But I voted no.
But its original plan of development had been approved 10 years prior. They were.
I understand, but we didn't have to give them a ticket.
We didn't have to give them that density
Correct.
that was required.
So the letter that you're talking about, so is, let's say that, you know, these people decide to pitch into, now we got enough to do it. Does that put this on hold until it's completed? Or
Yes.
can they go at the same
No.
time?
All right. So, because of all of the minutia that's going on, just the acquisition contract is over a year long. Okay. The total time for it to go from now till closing, so it goes in steps. Development goes in steps. It goes, hey, we think this will be good, but we're not going to buy it until we get some entitlement. Okay. So the first is zoning. Okay. Now, zoning does not deal with traffic. It does not deal with drainage. It doesn't deal with anything. It's strictly zone. That's the way the law is set. Can it be used in its highest and best use? I know we've got members of the commissions and council that think that's not right, but that's the law. Okay?
And our
Now,
biggest argument is lots.
all right, so here's your option. So I'm coming before you let's just follow the rule of law. So the city said it was R1. Everybody, when it expanded, said it was R1. So can the rest of the property be unified to the level it's already zoned? Portion of it, R1. Now the debate is size of lot. So 45 foot, 110, 50, 110, 50, 120. Okay, 55, 120, 55, 110. Okay, or 60 by 100, 60 by 110, or 60 by 120. Champions, they have a number that are wide but shallow. But let's see, I think the last ones I saw, you had several that are 0.16, which is basically about 6,000, 6,500 square feet. Okay. What KB proposed on the first round with the 45s, though they were going to do 50s in their design, was closer to 5,500. They asked for 5.5, 5,500 square feet. All right. Whether they deliver that or not usually depends on the terrain, topo, all those guys. Y'all here, you have quite a few. There were 60, but you have some at 50. But if you're in the estates, they were wide. Okay. That was pretty standard in the county. All the lots that we were developed were either 60 by 110, 60 by 120 in the county years ago, or we were 1 acre. Okay. But the 1 acres really started at Copper Ridge and Vintage Oaks and Canyon Lake. And that was really driven not by the county or the city, but the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. They say that if you don't have sewer, it's got to be a 1 acre minimum. Okay, that's the rule. And water. You have to provide water. If it's 5.01 acres per tract, no rule. Well, and septic. Okay, so that's how that works. Now, your choice is in the rule of law. we can turn them down as it was at planning for the small lot. We can turn them down for a bigger lot, even a bigger lot, up to 60. But the second you do that, you've now forced them to the choice of R2, R3, C, C1, C1A, B, and industrial, M1. If you kill 3 of their choices, you only leave them with the remainder. So what we usually recommend to subdivisions, which generally don't want anything. Okay. I don't want any developments. It's my green space. It's been my backyard. Well, buy it, and it continues to be your backyard. You want to make it a 37-acre home park?
Is it
Make it all.
publicly for sale? Is the land publicly for sale?
Say what?
Is the land publicly for sale, the 38 acres?
It's under contract, but if it failed, it could be sold.
Was it publicly for sale?
Oh, yeah.
On what amount?
It just wasn't signage on it because the family didn't want to put sign. Okay. But it's been on the market for 3 years.
I do have a question in that way. You'll have to forgive me because I'm completely ignorant to all of this stuff, but I just wonder so you mentioned all of the zoning that it could be. I don't really know what all those letters represent, but I'm guessing you're saying it could either be residential, commercial, or industrial, essentially.
Exactly.
Is there a path that looks like it becomes a new Braunfels public park? No. Is there a path that looks like our HOAs band together and buy it?
Could.
Okay. What does that look like?
All right, so that would be a backup contract to the development company's contract. You would be looking at an acquisition cost somewhere, without disclosing a current contract, you're going to be somewhere between $70,000 and $85,000 an acre to acquire the 30-something. Several $1 million. Okay. Now, what we generally try to tell subdivisions you're going to move forward. Look, everything takes traffic. When is that handled? It's handled in master plan after zoning. Zoning just says, is this a use that we're comfortable with and it's its highest and best adjacent to what it's adjacent to? So if I'm residential on 2 sides and agriculture residential behind, what's the common sense? Residential. Because what you don't want, if it was like 725, the first 300 feet are commercial, what's remaining? That's a long piece of frontage. So if you end up with 10, 15 acres, guess what goes on 10 or 15 acres? Not a subdivision. Townhome, high density, or commercial, or apartment. Yes.
I'm just looking at this. The majority of this around us,
Right.
I mean, there are some commercial. The majority that's everything around us is R1A 6.6.
Right.
And they're going.
With the exception of Champions, which is not fully 6 points.
And the new
They
Waco
have-
Springs Council approved.
What?
And the new Waco Springs development that they approved for the 50-foot lot.
Is what?
Question.
Well, majority, so I'm saying, majority of this is R1 6.6.
Does not have to hook
They're
into
proposing
our
R1A
Come in.
5.5.
Right. But, again, they just approved a 5.5 behind, Waco Springs.
What 5.5?
What was it?
It was in the original design of 6. Well, I got to look under the new LDO. In the old, it would have been under R188, which would have been an 8 to the acre. R16
Is that that
is 6
section
to
right
the
there?
acre.
Is that section right there off Waco Springs, that new development? Is that
You got it.
So it doesn't say what it is.
Because it wasn't published at the time on it.
So question.
Yes.
That neighborhood does not have to hook into Mission Hills Ranch. The city is asking them to build that road. We do not want that road. They
Alright.
can enter and exit in that neighborhood on their own.
Okay.
So why isn't that an option?
All right, great question. Because when you were built, you didn't have a second exit. Fire department requires 2. If a major event happens at the frontage, you can't get out. So when a plat was approved, we are required to stub out future roadway. Period.
So can we go out and
Yes.
not connect to 1863?
We're not. There's no connection to 1863. Zero. Wherever that came from, it's not. The road, let me explain. All right, let's talk about roads. Here we go. Number 1, there is going to be a loop. Not really. It's more like an expressway that goes from the Comal County Recycling Center around to 1863 to Word Ranch Road, down the hill to Interstate 35 to create a bypass to go to San Antonio. That's 7 years out. They're in the design phase and the EPA approval phase. Okay? There are 2 traffic lights scheduled for, one for Waco, one for Mission Hills. They're allowed to go till 2026. But Susan and I are trying everything we can to get one of them done now. And every time I go, they go, well, they're behind or they don't have the parts, you know. So we're still working. Those 2 lights have to go in. So that bypass connectivity, it's not even on the thoroughfare plan for Old Mission Lane to go to 1863. It would connect to Mission Valley before it would do the other, depending on the design. If a school went in there, it could change it. But the way it works, it becomes your exit for that end of your subdivision to be able to exit through them without that and fire and rescue. Now, whose jurisdiction is how they connect? It's not city. It's tech stuff. All right, so let's go back to how development works. Yes.
How are we allowed to have this neighborhood for over 20 years without a second exit?
Because the stub out was designed in the original, and the city's thoroughfare plan said in future development it had to be built. Okay, so this house, for example, it's been on the books for many, many years that if it's ever developed, that road would have to be built by the developer on your behalf to get fire and rescue. That's the way it goes.
So question back to the vote, the zoning and the vote. So if you guys were to deny this leave at city council, and it was to come again, but obviously they have to wait, what, 1 year before they can reapply?
Depends. If they applied for something other than what they applied for before, they get a new
Repeat Angela's
shot.
question.
Okay, but I guess, so if we were to agree as a neighborhood that we understand, that we agree that its highest and best use is residential. However, we just don't like the high density and we don't like the builder. Now, I know we can't.
That's a lawsuit. We're dead on arrival. That is a prejudicial interruption of business. The city gets sued the second that came out of any council sitting member's mouth. Or if it was influenced in that. God forbid don't do that in your talks. Never mention the name of a development company. First of all, with $2 million in offsites, they're not building $300,000 houses. Their cost at $38,000 a door for impact plus $2 million on offsites, they're going to be lucky if they hit as low as $385. The rest of them are going to have to be in the fours. It's not, they build different types. So if you look at Legend Pond, it's different than what they built on Green Road. But they have some, when they go into this, they have to get into the juice because of where they go. Okay.
The only legal is lot size.
Right, that's what.
Yeah. If it was me, yes.
I think it's important to talk about what you told me about this property.
All right, the pink.
Talk about that right there.
All right.
Go back to the
Everybody's worried about it coming behind you and getting bigger. In the conversations with MBU,
Okay, guys, let's listen.
all right, in the conversation with the Braunfels Utility, Ryan Kelso, the chairman, and his board said that they would only in the future grant sewer to the properties that were currently zoned R1 across the highway and their mother tract. So, what that means is you're behind them, they can't go past you. The yellow tract's owned by a different family. They can't develop. MBU will not provide sewer to the pink area. So their capacity design for their 50-year plan and the water is designed on the mother tracts only. Okay. Now, things can change. The school district comes in and says, well, we got to build a new school, and then that could change it. But just subdivision development, that kind of thing, is going to be restricted. Currently, I can't tell you 10 years from now. I can just tell you what I know today. Okay. So,
Hey, when you say the mother tract, I'm over here.
wait.
When you say the mother tract, do you mean that little sliver of R1 that's currently?
The mother tract is the whole tract. So it's R1.
Even though right now it's not 100% R1.
No, but it's so normally when a property's brought in, if it's a big tract, they bring it in agriculture pre-development, APD. So the back was APD, but since the city limits was done on the first 300 feet, that was to expand jurisdiction. That's how it happened. So usually you want them to unify to what they already are. That's what they're requesting.
Mr. Edwards, so if it was you, go back to that. If it was you, what would you do?
Let me answer this guy's question, and then I'll get to
Well, I'd just like to point out something. You were talking about Grant Ranch, which used to belong to Agnes Grant. It was 400 acres. It was bought. They put in permits for development, but they never put in their silt fences and all that. And so somebody shut that project down because they didn't comply. It then got sold to somebody else, but it was also subdivided. 200 acres went to NBISD,
right.
which is right directly behind a gun range, so unlikely you'd sell a house there anyway. And then the other 200 acres was sold to another developer, and they're asking for approval to do community sewer.
Okay, so what I'm talking about for y'all is NDU. All of the land behind you is in the county jurisdiction now, not in the city jurisdiction. If they can accumulate 137 acres or greater, and they have a blue line creek, then they can request a sewer plant on their own. A municipal utility district. That's Kyle and Buda. Almost everything out between 35 and Highway 21 is all mud.
Is Barramundi not a mud? Is Barramundi not a mud?
The new part of Barramundi is a mud.
Didn't y'all just deny, did the city just deny like 6 or county 6 mud districts due to water?
All right. So, when it comes to water, you get to talk to the right guy, because I'm probably the most experienced on SB2 of anybody. So, Texas Water, the county platted 7,000 lots, and they were approved, but they didn't have the letter to pass. They don't have zoning in the county. Texas Water said, we don't have it, and so it's delayed. TCEQ says, okay, you have a certificate of necessity. Water companies have monopolies on areas defined with the state. Okay? NBU's true jurisdiction had stopped at Champions. you're not even in NDU's original CCM. Okay. This Mission Hills Ranch was served at will because of the request of the particular. But those out there are under Texas Water's certificate of necessity, their monopoly domain. The second they denied the 7,000 lots water, the shot clock started. They have 1 year to get a portion of it on, but no later than 5. Or Alright, so Spring Hill's a prime example. They've now got rid of some of their area to the city of Seguin because Seguin had the water, but Spring Hill didn't. So Geronimo, almost all of it up 123 is going to be serviced till you get to Timmerman by the city of Seguin, but that's a year and a half away. Because it took 2 years to get to the state house to make it. Alright, so back to the question. There are very few approvals coming anymore because of the cost of development at R1 A6 or 60 by 120, 7,200 square foot lots. It's just not happening because it's astronomical in pricing. For anybody to develop that at 7,200, the average cost of the house would probably be in the 60s by the time they got done, if it could get to that currently. And more than likely, nobody's going to come to it. So all development, whether it was D.R. Horton themselves, they would be at 50 or 55 foot. But a lot of times they're shrinking the backyard. Okay, that's how it happened in Champions. They may have had a wide lot, but the depth of the lots were only 90 to 100 feet, in many cases some 110. Okay. So, I know that the developer, they've called me and said, well, we guarantee a minimum 50, but we'll have a blend in the design of 6,000 square feet to 55, which would get them at, let's see, 6,000 plus 5, 6,600. So they would do a blend, and they're willing to go on record on, when it comes before a council, to that extent, that they would drop the small lot and increase. If I was a subdivision, I would take the win, because it's not guaranteed that KB is going to finish this deal. Okay, because they got to get their letter of commitment, they got to get their utilities, they got to get their entitlements, they got to get their 2 TIs. They have to do one for the city, and then they have to have the one for TxDOT. And as Hank and I were talking about, it becomes a question of where they're going to put the exit, where they're going to take Old Mission Lane out to. So if it exits 46 proper and not the ramp, then they would probably have to look at traffic control. All right? Or they might be forced to pay for a traffic light at your main entry. Okay? So that either way, if they're on 46, they're going to have to be able to provide a method to get people to turn left with that overpass where it is.
I'm going back towards Kenyon.
I'm going to tell you, that discussion with TxDOT, it ain't a short discussion.
Right. Thank God.
I mean, just 2 of them I've done on 123 in Guadalupe County. I mean, they go, well, no, you got to be, all right, so just take here. From your entrance to their earliest first entrance has to be 350 feet away because of the speed. Okay. Now, TxDOT might come back and say, no, we'd rather you move back and enter on the ramp. So what happens then? Then your concern becomes people going to Bernie have to turn and come through you. But if you are going out, especially everybody on this end of Mission Hills, you're going to go out through the new subdivision because it's quicker, faster. You don't have to go all the way around. You don't have to do it. I mean, it's just going to be buses, the school buses that come in, pick up the kids. If they're headed back that way, they'll go right out that way.
Where the main school bus stop is? Do you know where the main school bus stop is?
No, but I've heard plenty about one particular U-turn the bus is making currently.
Correct. And there's no lights there. There's no city lights there. There's also no crosswalk. And you're going to make a flat road from 46 to there, and there's no plan.
So, Hank and I, in our discussion, look, you can go, no, that traffic, the world's coming to an end. You know, there's going to be peace without honor, all of that stuff. You have to come with solution or come on record with what. So as I told Hank, I said, look, if they come with a higher density, okay, 50 or 55 foot wide lots, support it, but come on record and say, if they connect where they go on to 46, we want a traffic control light. Because we need a way to turn left. We're worried about the injury accident. See, that's factual. We're worried about this, and here's the solution we'd like to see when you go to master plan. You get that on record. Okay.
Mr. Edwards.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, does the city, the grid that they show, the plan was like a grid. Does the city allow or request so that new development is similar to this one, like the winding roads? Is that not even considered?
Because of the shape of that property and the terrain, it may have some similarity, but okay, so if they have a park in there that can change everything, there's no, I mean, you can ask all day long, but at the end of the day, it's a give and take. I'll give you an example. Deppenschmidt, everybody know where the street Deppenschmidt is? You know where Tree of Life is?
Yeah.
There's a road to the left when you're looking at Tree of Life, that's Deppenschmidt. There's a subdivision right back there. The developer originally came and said, look, we don't want to build cookie cutter. We would like to take our sidewalks and make them curvy. And put little things on the outside. Okay? And little curvy road, right? Little curvy sidewalk. And then it said, we want to come in, we want to make a grand entrance, we want to put our park right there. And it'll be kind of a show place and everything to do. And the Parks Department went, not at the beginning of your subdivision, because if you put it there and kids are walking across, people are going to get hit, the kid's going to be run over, you need to put a sidewalk, this, that, and the other, so they poo-poo. I said, well, how about if we just move it back to here? No. The developer tried 3 times to make something different. At the end of the day, I said, he goes, where do you want it? They said, we want it in the back corner, protect the bike zone. He said, great, guess what? You got a square subdivision. You can try.
Right.
Yeah, I got a question about that larger lot size you mentioned and the reason it wouldn't go. Out here, on the west end, beautiful homes all the way along, and one of the things that doesn't exist in this plan, at least, is anything a little bigger that matches what is currently being built. Now, I know that we're a little smaller right along here, and if they match that now, okay, that's better than nothing. But I question that even a lot as big as a quarter acre, 10,000 square feet, would sell like hotcakes.
Well, won't happen. Well, a quarter acre
They'll make
lot.
their money back.
Yeah, but our highest right now for us to deal with on a regular basis inside the city limits is 6 to the acre. Okay, so take 45,560. That is the maximum size lot. Now it can be bigger if it chooses to be, but the city regulation is 60 by 1. Okay.
We'll go with that.
But a little bit bigger lot.
7,200.
That'd be perfect.
I
know that the cost is going to be more, and it'll probably be that maybe Katie doesn't want it, someone else does.
the issue,
There's a city
But, all right, but now you're putting pressure on somebody to say, we don't care, as long as it's that, it's fine. So technically you might get by with it, but they can ask for an exception.
Right. But we can try.
I have a question about
I haven't seen it succeed.
I was just wondering, just as the HOA owner, we take care of all these green spaces and it's opened up to the public now. So we're paying to subsidize.
Are your streets private?
No.
They're public.
Same difference.
So Mr. Edwards.
But we
takes
own
care
the
of green
common areas.
spaces.
Yeah.
We own the common area. We have 36 acres in green space.
That's
41.
green space, but the road itself.
Not the road, but the green space. we own.
Yeah.
All right, the green space, if it's owned by the HOA, it can be fenced and made exclusive unless there was a deal with the Parks Department that it was public. Yes, sir.
But 6 houses per acre, 70 to 60,
Yeah,
is more along the lines when you take.
yeah, to you, but the other size is closer to Champions, and so both have been improved.
Those are a different building.
I know.
That's a different
Well,
product.
I'm just saying. They don't have to be consistent to the product next to you. It's
I
not the law.
understand that that's the loophole. I
But
get
it's
that.
not the law.
I understand, but it is the law to act to acquire bigger lots.
It's just not the law. The thing is, there's no requirement it has to be similar. There's no requirement it has to be similar or better. There's no requirement it has to be Chesmar building.
But it's the way we can do it. We
You
do
can
it
ask all day long.
Well, it'll be on record that we asked. It's our voice.
There's a question.
Yeah.
I have a question too, actually. So one, in regards to the rezoning, like I live behind the yard place, so our roads are private.
In the
The
enclave.
enclave behind the
Those
gate.
are, but you're gated.
Right.
And because you're gated, you have to be first. And they don't have access to your gate or gate code.
I mean, everybody can, right? Regardless.
It's a safe way for somebody to go through. But actually having keyed access is not the case.
And also, I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but that you've recused yourself from the city council.
I can't vote.
Can you explain to us as to why? And then if you can't vote, basically who's representing us? Is it
All right.
us?
My district, the mayor's in my district, District 3. When I can't vote, you go to the mayor because he can represent District 3. I have been representing the Schwann's family for 5 years. I have a legal binding contract with them I can't avoid. So what I do is recuse. I'm here to give you all the tools. I'm going to give you some other tools to put on your notification when it comes. I'm just warning you not to do some things that get us into trouble. Okay? You want to be successful, not fail. You want to be in the compromise, but you don't want to be hurt. Okay, so we asked about this. So, yes, you can ask them, well, we want 60-foot wide lots and others. It's up to the council at that point in time to go, is that a reasonable request or not, based on the current time? Several subdivisions, they fought it tooth and nail, and they ended up with commercial.
What a farce.
Okay?
But we do want, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, what we do want is we do want larger lots because it fits more into this side of town. We do want a more expensive product that's going to be more expensive than ours because that's just what we want. That's just what we want. So we want whoever's selling the land on both sides. But what we want is we want a different product.
The only thing you can really go for is a bigger lot. The only thing we can really go for is
Right.
a bigger lot.
Right.
Everything else is out
Right.
because it's got
For the zoning,
loopholes.
only thing we can do really is go up there and we can put ourselves on record that we want larger lots. That is our only really play for the zoning right now. And that's why I wanted to kind of say that because that's where we have to go. I think if KB or whoever's builder's going to come in there, if they don't come in there and come with bigger lots, then it's probably going to get denied. it's going to get denied the current size it's on right now. I guarantee
Yeah,
you.
and there's nothing you can say about what kind of building they're going to build.
Right.
The house that they build is what they're going to build.
All right,
The
stop,
minimum
stop,
is
stop,
6,600.
stop. All right. I don't care. There's a lot of people that would say D.R. Horton, Lenore, Meritage. I mean, we could go through a litany list of why I don't want it. If I live in Hunters Creek, do I want Meritage next to me? No. But do I have control of that? No. Can I even specify that? No. I can't let that come out of my mouth.
But we can
I can say we would prefer.
Yeah, I wouldn't even go there.
I mean, 70. If six houses are required per acre, we could at the
You can
minimum
ask for that, yes.
Yeah, 7,200 more 7,000. If we could we request 6 houses per acre?
6,000, yes, absolutely. In fact, I will tell you that.
Per acre.
No,
Can we request
six,
that?
well, no, look, here's the way. Okay.
Because what was the rule? What's the 6? Is that where does the 6 houses per acre come in?
That was the original R1 AC.
In the old days.
Yeah, but remember, this is on average. Okay, all right. It's not a God rule. Okay, if I have a bunch of wasted space, it just says I have to average. Average. Okay. So, if you look at their original master plan that they were playing with, they didn't have any 45. They were all 50 and 55. So when their representative indicated that they would go 6,000 or 6,500, they already had some that were in that position. Okay. So you can ask for them to hold R16 or 6 to the acre. Ask for it. For one record. Ask for traffic control. The other thing that Hank brought up that was a big concern was drainage.
Is what?
Drainage.
Yeah.
Drainage, okay? And worried about their drainage being up here and yours down here and overflow, okay? They are in the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone. They're under a whole lot of regulations anyway. So their detention pond will require, number one, a WPAP, water quality pump. Okay? That's number one. Number two, a secondary pond after the water quality. So they got to clean it, and then it gets to go into that. But they can't have it overflow into you. They have to contain 100% of whatever new water they create.
You mentioned a moment ago that you're not able to vote because of your relationship with the owner of that land. Now, how are we gonna have our voice represented in council?
I've said it 3 times. You talk to the mayor.
So the mayor is. Do we need to get a meeting like this with the mayor, or is it gonna have to be something we just show up? Councilman?
Everything you're telling to me, I'm taking back to him today. Okay, it will be distributed to all the council. I met with the homeowners association. They have requested 60 foot by 120 lots, and that they would wholly support that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Right. Yes.
Yes.
So the other question that I have, I'm going to go back to the road because I live 10 houses from that road.
Right.
Chesmar is building 1,900 homes that way. I believe that there might be plans to hook into our neighborhood. Is that the second exit? And we can ask for that neighborhood not to hook into our neighborhood.
You're gonna ask, but the fire marshal's gonna turn you down.
Yeah. But if we have a second entrance and exit that way.
But is Chesmar stepping into you that way?
But we can go back to the 4 minutes of the fire response time.
The question is Chesmar connecting to your subdivision?
I think it might be.
Chesmar's entrance is on Highway 46, quite a ways past us.
Toward where?
It is just before the county recycle plant. There's a couple of there's a new storage business and a house, and then there's a gate that goes all the way back there to Brant Ranch, which is what it used to be called.
Does it connect any of their road stuff out to you?
No.
No. That answered her
Your
question.
Blue Creek,
Look, I know
however,
you want that block, but
you have an issue. Your Blue Creek, if it's considered that, runs directly into our pond. Okay?
why?
Their drainage comes off of that property and comes through Mission Hills Ranch to our water quality pond.
Any water that goes there now doesn't have to be captured. Okay, whatever Mother Nature creates, the state law says I can't dump more. So if I build something, I got to detain what new water I create. That's the law. Okay. And go ahead.
When they cut in roads and everything back there, they were supposed to put in detention areas to slow the travel of water, because once you build a bunch of flat surfaces, the ground doesn't absorb the water, it runs down,
right,
and that would overwhelm us in any large rain event. So they were supposed to put in detention ponds to slow it down.
They're required to.
Okay, but they didn't do that, and they started cutting in roads, and that was it.
I don't control the county stuff.
I know.
But I can tell you, the city looks at the drainage project, a project that was fully my project on Goodwin Lane. The neighbors were worried about runoff and water. I put a drainage ditch on the backside of our subdivision, went all the way across the castle, plus 2 other detention ponds in the building to make sure water wouldn't run unless it was a rain, a flood, a brook. Okay.
So just to clarify a couple of things. So in the future, we already have a red light right here, a red light at our entrance, right?
Come again?
So right now in the planning, we have a red light at Waco Springs. We have a red light at our entrance.
Yes.
So it doesn't make any sense.
Mission down there.
Mission Valley.
No, Mission Hills.
Mission Valley and Waco.
For champions.
Oh, there's not one here.
No. But you could request in your comments.
Either one or the other of those two needs a red light, right? That's what you're saying. Okay.
Right. Yes.
Request that. Okay.
There's a subdivision, Stone Canyon Crossing. I'm sorry, Stone Crossing off of the loop.
Yeah.
One entrance in, one entrance out.
They're stubbed out another way on the Madelon.
Okay. Well, they only had, but what they did with the 2 in for the fire, there's another subdivision on the other side of them. There's a road.
Yep.
They put a fence up for the fire department to get in and out if they need to get to the back of that subdivision. And it looks nice. They put the gate up and they can go back and forth.
Subdivision coming in needs to go to Bernie, and TxDOT says they have to put it on the route.
Say that again.
If TxDOT mandates they put their entry on the on-ramp for this subdivision, any development of that to go to Bernie would have to either go all the way down to do a U-turn, which is deadly dangerous, or come through your subdivision. What do you think TxDOT's going to pick? Or they can make them put the exit over, put a traffic light on it, and let you have your fire exit.
Well, if the road is already there and if they cut the road, they'd put a gate there. That's what they did with that subdivision.
Yeah, but it's back. Okay. It's back. It's not near an entry. It's not near the road
On the
access.
46
conduit.
Okay.
Okay.
There's a question over there.
Historically, I haven't always been in politics, I'll say that. Planning and zoning said they deny the request. That's their recommendation to the council. How often do y'all go against what the zoning commission asks?
If it was within reason, they go along with it. But if a compromise is offered that is more reasonable, whatever, then the councils go against it.
Right. Well, and I just want to, my second part of that, I know you're worried about roads. I'm personally worried about water. So I would suggest everyone bring this with them and hold it up at the meeting. Because it just came in the mail this week. I mean, our Canyon Lake is empty, you know?
But again, we
I know.
don't derive our water from Canyon Lake.
I hear we have water coming somewhere some days, but that's also planning on we're going to get rain some days.
I have. And I'm also telling you, they just made a deal, 4 entities, to bring water from Gonzales and big wells and pumps. There's lots of thousand acre feet to assure y'all will never run out of water.
Hey, Leah, just a general thing here. I mean, you mentioned if I were you, this is what I would do. I mean, you are us. I mean, you represent us. So, I mean, just that distinction. 2, I know you're a broker on this deal, so that complicates things in a way that
That's why I'm
regular
here to give you
citizens,
tools.
I know, it just makes it look like it's a conflict of interest.
That's why
which it
I
is.
step off the dime.
Yeah. 3, you say you have talked to the developer about maybe doing this, that, and the other thing. I mean, it just seems like your hands obviously are all over this.
You tell me
How
something.
I mean, so when you say, if I were you, you can see from our position, it's like, why would I believe you? But you seem to be well versed on all this stuff. But, you know, our concern is you're a developer. There's other people on the council that have developed that have development things. We want you to represent us, whether it's these guys, Mission Hills, Champions Village. Where do you live, Lee?
Well,
Let me just ask you, where in the city do you live?
Come again?
Where in the city do you live? If
I live in your district.
okay, if you had this thing happening right next to where you live, I would like to know what you would do.
And that's what I want to
Well,
talk about.
I mean, what would you do? Because you
Let
live
me
all the time.
go through these. Okay. One of the things I told Hank is you can force it into a supermajority. How?
You can force it into a supermajority, is what he said.
A vote. Let me explain how a supermajority works. Council, unlike planning, they can pass along with one vote. But if it gets to me, okay, and over 20% of the adjacent properties object to their application as it stands, then it requires a 6 out of 7 member vote to pass it. Did y'all get that? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. 6 out of 7. If I recuse, it's 6 out of 6.
Oh.
Now, what's my experience? I've only seen one with a recusation pass in 15 years. That answer your question?
So how do we get it?
And that was a tool I told you about last week.
How do we force a supermajority?
You're already there. How many people on the lots adjacent to the property sent in their little
On
forms to
Soledad.
object?
200 feet on Soledad from the property. 200 feet.
No, we got more.
Everybody within 200 feet. Did you object?
Do we still have time for those people to turn in their cards?
You got to get in. You got to get in now or before the second reading.
Because I think they said it was only 8%.
Now, it's going to, let's say that it passed, it's not a supermajority, and it passed the first time 5-6. Okay. Then guess what? It has to be read a second time before council. If it's unanimous and passes it, it can go into consent. That can be pulled back out of consent by the public. So we want to rediscuss this. Okay.
Mr. Edwards.
Yes.
So what I gather, and I've heard your talk, and I've heard everybody's questions, but at the end of the day, we're not trying to stop them. We're trying to get them to proceed in a manner that benefits us as homeowners at the adjacent properties. So what do we want? We want, I'm not saying necessarily 7,000 square foot lots, but we want wider lots. We don't want houses 10 feet apart. I also would like them to leave natural habitat. So if it's a tree greater than 18 inches in diameter, 16 inches in diameter, some measurement that says we want this left. But if we approach KB, the buyer, and your client,
he's not my client.
The
Understand?
seller.
I don't
that's what I'm
represent
saying.
KB. I only represent the Schwann's family.
Okay,
Not
so-
KB.
so-
I don't care. If y'all want to buy it, I'll tell Alice right now. You're good.
So what I'm saying is, approach KB, which is your client's buyer, and say, look, they're willing to work with us if we meet some or all of these requests.
Right.
It's in KB's interest to do that.
If they can.
If they can do that. So that, to me, that should be the discussion we're having, is what do we want that's reasonable, and not how do we stop them? How do we go to a supermajority and get 6 out of 6 or 6 out of 7 to stop them?
And that's exactly correct, and that's what we talked about. A lot of times it goes the way this goes. Okay, I prefer to be very logical. What do you want to pass? Now, we've got one set, because it's got to be the big lot, big lot, big lot. Okay. I've got some of y'all that say, well, just bigger than what they were offering as long as it's a better product. Now we're talking about trees. Okay, so the law says...
Well, this is what we can ask. We can ask anything we want.
Yeah, look, zoning, when it gets to master plan after zoning doesn't require you save this tree or that tree. That's in the city ordinances. That's in the LDOs, okay? There is some rules about taking great treasure trees back. If you take one down, you got to put so many in its place, but that's usually a commercial code. Residential hasn't been held to that. Parkland, they have two choices under the city ordinances on park. They either build it or give money to the Parks Department to build a bigger regional park. If they're tight on space, they're going to write the check to the Park Department. What does the Park Department want? They don't want them building their own parks. They want the money to build mega parks. So there's always a rub there, okay? That's just the logics of it. I don't control that. That's a choice. So they get a choice, A or B. Okay. And even if they choose to build their own, sometimes they don't spend enough, they have to pay anyway. So the terrain of that property, there's going to be some green space. It just may not be a huge magnitude. Okay. I think if you have a position of, say, look, we really would prefer to have 7,200 square foot lots, 60 by 120. Okay. However, we would accept this, but we want to go on record, though we know it's not in zoning. We would like traffic mitigation of some sort on the old mission lines, whether it be a traffic light or you put them out a certain way. One way or another, we want something that deals with that, and we want assurance their drainage isn't going to come down into our detention pond, which we have to clean, that we have to do, okay? Because really, the elevation of that, they're probably not going to run water backwards, okay? Unless they're on the high side coming down to you. But if they're on the high side going down, that water is probably going to be designed to go all into their detention, and then some out toward the highway that TxDOT will accept.
And that's the concern I have, because they're like up here. The water runs this way. But I mean, I got it. And those are the three topics that I got. Told you I was going to go on record for those three areas alone.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm going to go on record for.
Absolutely.
Yes, and that's the three that he just mentioned.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, that's the only three we're going to get.
Yeah.
My turn?
Go, Pete.
The detention pond, or we have a water quality pond. On the east side of that pond is a detention area that was built as part of the major construction, highway overpass, all of that stuff. And that detention pond, part of the land belongs to us, part of it doesn't belong to us. It belongs to TxDOT. They could probably run into that detention area if it's designed to handle their
But
the
it's
additional.
all based on engineering, design, and capacity. Okay. I can be right next to a detention pond, but I can't calculate in my use unless it's considered to be joint. Because let's just take a pond that's on Alice's property. They can't use it for detention. As it sits, they have to tear the dike out, they have to drain it, Then they got to calculate it, and then if the detention is fine for what they're doing, they can put the dike right back on. Okay. But if it needed to be bigger, then it would have to be expanded to be able to take the capacity of the water.
I think I have an answer to this question, but I have to ask. I think a lot of us think about homes that look like homes on the east side of 35 that don't look like the hill country, that look like hardy plank siding and a lot of painted siding. Not saying that they're of lesser value than what we are to them, right? You mentioned
in some cases.
I know. You mentioned the master plan. Does the master plan specify any type of finishes on these homes?
State law. Up until 5-6 years ago, we had architectural control on like commercial buildings. Oh, if you were going to be over in this district, you had to have a stone front or masonry. State of Texas, I think in the last biennium or the biennium before, passed a law that says we couldn't enforce that anymore. It's against the law. The state of Texas in the last three legislatures have cut our fingers off on what we can't do sometimes. Okay. So here's the thing: if you already have a high level of objection, okay, the question will be asked at council. The developer is now modifying, regardless of who it is, modifying and said that they would accept this size lot and they could work with it, okay? And then they'll ask, okay, and there'll be discussion, and then they'll look out to the audience and says that, you know, is this a workable situation? Are you willing to remove your objection? And if that's so, then that would be amended at that time to move forward, okay? It can be done that way. But you have the power of control, because with that over 20% objection to the landmass area that's within 200 feet, it's going to force a supermajority, which means 6-6. And if a second councilman's out, it has certainly got to be unanimous. Okay, even if one's out sick or whatever. So you already have a big stick of supermajority items passed in the last 15 years.
How does that work? What you said about
Okay, so the Attorney General's office begins to look at cities that begin, no, 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 no. You cannot take away a person's personal property rights to liquidate an asset for a given use, provided it conforms within the city's ordinance and guidelines. Personal property rights, period. So, here's what's happened in the litigations in the state of Texas. Neighborhood said, we don't want residential. Strike one. We don't want commercial. Strike two. We don't want industrial. Strike three. They come forward and say, well, they said they didn't want residential. They didn't want commercial. They didn't want industrial. They turned us down in a formal vote 3 times. We want apartments. Turn them down, you get sued. Now you're forced to pass them. You can run out of gas.
Is that what's been happening around the city?
Now the city, we've had very few cases we've had that. Look, everybody goes, y'all are killing us now. We've passed, and Angela knows, in the last year and a half since we took the rates up, the number of plats coming before us has diminished by almost 50%, if not closer to 2/3. We're not seeing near as many major developments anymore. I know you haven't seen a bunch. I mean, they're just not happening because we've already put in restrictions. Everything you see building, like the new apartment complex everybody flipped out about, because, oh, it's low income. It's not. It was built with HUD money, with HUD financing, but it's market rate with only 20% of their available apartments going to AMI. They had to comply with 80% of the average median income, which means if we're at 78,000, the income to get in there for 20% of those apartments was 80% of 80,000 or 64,000 a year to qualify. Okay, so it's not low income. But most of that apartment zoning, 15 years old. It just got developed now. Okay. Zoning doesn't say it's going to go to use right away. It just says this is its proper use now or in the future, unless somebody has to change it later.
Hey, Mr. Davis, I don't mean to derail the meeting, but I had a question for you. The uniqueness of New Braunfels, and I think why a lot of people like living here, is that it is unique and it has heritage. Yeah. It's full of small businesses. The development that's currently happening in Beermindy, in Creekside, along 35, where there's an academy going in now, there's nothing that's going to distinguish New Braunfels from the Forum or the Rim or pick a city.
So what we as a city are doing right now, I was working very closely with a couple of the councilmen about how we want to deal with the West End, how we're dealing with Castell, how we're dealing with the downtown micro core, to make sure we preserve as much of that. So there's a new development plan that's been put together. It's been run through a little bit through planning, that the West End is going to become a cultural lane and access. We're trying to build the culture down there to give us more of that home feeling for everybody. The development on the river, trying to use as much green space and development to make it cool, special, that kind of things. The outer perimeter, the state rules and laws on development, I can't dictate to a builder what product to put in there. It's against the law. I can't dictate he can't build peacefully. I can't dictate that, well, you can't use hardy plank. I used to. My first 6 years on planning, we could. But they, like I said, 2-3 bienniums ago, the state said, no, that's illegal. So, what's the odds of them doing hardy? Okay, if anybody been over to Sums Landing, over by Creekside, looks like townhouses in Chesmar. Yeah. They're all plain, except they look like farmhouse. Okay, batten board, that kind of thing. But it wasn't mandated. It was chosen by the developer to make that product for that price point. Okay.
So you got a question? Yes, sir. Hey, I got a question real quick. Can you give us some guidance on the most efficient way to street 20%? We have a letter to the mayor, a petition. Is it just going to be bodies of city council?
If you live, what is it?
Soledad.
San Miguel?
No.
Yeah.
It's Soledad
and Soledad. If you live on Soledad and San Mateo? Yeah, San Mateo, and you send in an objection, they count it. Okay? So, today or Monday morning, just submit your objection for the current request. Okay?
Yeah, I know that. What I'm asking is, I heard some people didn't get their cards. Can they just send a letter of objection, or does it have to be that card that they didn't get?
You can send a letter of objection. But I would probably send them a letter, drop it off, that I'm checking with your address.
Okay.
And that you're the homeowner.
Hey, I didn't get the card. Here's my address. This is my objection.
And get it in before noon on Monday, okay? And then, because they can amend it if it's coming before. Okay, so that's number one. That's your number one protection. It doesn't take me, it doesn't take anybody. That's you personally taking your rights to the table.
Okay, but after they screw it up 3 times, you get apartments. So what's the point?
That's the most efficient.
Is that the first strike, though, Lee?
So that's your first tool. The second tool is have compromise decisions. Do not, look, I will tell you, if you want to be heard correctly, you get your speakers lined up, and one of you talk about a subject with proof. The second one talks about something different with proof, but with an alternative. Don't just bring the problem, bring the solution. Okay. So the first person says, traffic, oh my God, we're dying already. Okay, we're having accidents up and down 46, what are you doing? And they'll come say, well, we're putting in 2 traffic lights. Okay, but you say, look, at this particular location, our concern is, I don't want them coming in and out. But the fire marshal says it's on the thoroughfare plan and the city's requiring it. Okay, so the city already requires it. They've got an extension of Mission Valley. Goes across the highway and connects and wipes out Waco Springs and connects in. Those are on the thoroughfare plan to protect your connectivity and fire. In a case of emergency fire, if there's a big wreck at your entrance, which could happen without a traffic control light, you ain't getting out. Okay? All right, so have your compromise. So somebody talks about traffic, somebody talks about quality, lot size, somebody talks about drainage, detention, somebody talks about trees. You get everything on the list, but if you go traffic, 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 guess what? At about third one, we go. If you don't know, I'm deaf. I wear a cochlear implant, so I just flipped you off. That's what my daughters say. Anyway, so we quit listening because you've just interviewed. But it's one thing to say traffic, and the first person says, well, at the intersection of such and such, this is what we're seeing, this is the number of cars in traffic, here's what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And the next person says, now, if you put this in over here, we're concerned about how this is going to function, and people coming through our subdivision. Look, unless they're going to Bernie, they ain't driving through here. They're going to go right out to go to town. And where are y'all going to go if you're on that side? Right through there. Okay. So, keep it to that.
We had 4 speakers at the zoning. We're going to have 5 speakers at the Mission Hill.
If you're within the first 200 feet, you want to have your hand up, you want to talk, whether I'm there or not. I gave you the most vicious tool known to man, the 20%. And I really help your case by not being on, because it really forces them, everybody's got to vote for it. How often does that happen in your household? Yeah. Okay. But come with a compromise. Now, if y'all come up with a compromise in advance and you want it communicated to KB, we'll send it along to them. Their representative's easy to get hold of. Angela knows how to get hold of them. Okay. Call me. I will convey everything you told me today. I'm going to turn around and tell all the members of council, here's the concern. They will not, do not want to approve small lot, period. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
We were at the rezoning meeting. The lady who represented KB Homes, whenever she started hearing the citizens say what they want and they started asking questions, she started changing her story.
No.
So whenever they asked for the, what is going to be the sound barrier, she was like, well, what do you want? When we asked when the city asked what the sign was going to be, what do you want? I don't believe she's going to come through with that.
No.
And that is not like on any paperwork that says this is what we want. So when the city zoning and planning, when and if they go back, can we come and say the sound barrier that we want is blah, blah, blah? Because
all right. So let's talk about sound barrier requirement. How many of you live on San Mateo? How tall are your fences? Guess, you know why? It's the city ordinance. You know what you can require them to do? If it's residential? That's the law. That's the ordinance. You could ask for 8, whatever, but it isn't going to happen. Okay. Now, if it was commercial, they have to do 8-foot masonry. But it's not commercial.
And with the commercial, if we said no, like you're saying, and then the city's going to get sued, which I think is a threat. I don't think the city will be sued for that.
Agreed.
But if
If you turn them down enough, you absolutely will. I guarantee you.
so, if it goes commercial or goes apartments, do they still have to expand that road? Is the
Yeah,
city
that
still-
road's going. That's a fire code. I can tell. Let me tell you.
But y'all would.
I
would
have
mandate
tried
that
to
commercial
fight
do that.
that one ordinance for 10 years because I took the attitude, safety. Why? One way in, one way out. Somebody robbed my house, all I got to do is have a cop car at the entry. I got them. But if I got 2 entries, they can go in and out everywhere.
And on the 2012 thorough plan, it has maps of it connecting to Old Mission on this end.
But,
so I know that you're saying that there's not.
the
but
first
if we say
one
yes to that,
in gets built. First one. If it was a backside, we could get the gate. But it's a front side going to Highway 46. I can't fix that one. I can tell you what the fire marshal's going to do. And let me tell you, in the last 2 years, the International Residential Code and the International Fire Code, they are hammering it. I mean, when they build that subdivision, you know how much fire flow they have to guarantee? Not yours, you're already in. They have to guarantee 850 gallons of water a minute for 2 hours in their fire hydrants. So, fire marshals really laying into it.
The school buses concern me. I don't even have any small children, but just being on the Facebook and the speeders in our own neighborhood, and they were asking for speed bumps, and I think one of the reasons we might know is they couldn't put speed bumps because there's only one way in and one way out. If they open up that road, I know we probably don't want speed bumps, but could they put some speed bumps? Then that would keep a lot of people out.
All right, so
Because it is a fight. I mean, I see it.
so let's talk about speed humps or traffic calming. I have one neighborhood that unanimously every homeowner on Wood and Howard wanted speed bumps because they were using it as a cut through from from Walnut to Fredericksburg.
Mm-hmm.
They had to have a traffic study, had to go through engineering. It failed because we had unanimity. We were able to get it on the books. I was able to get it through. Now, everybody hates it now, but we got a design on the one near the schools that were speed humps, not bumps. The ones on Howard are full-blown bumps. All 4 of them. Okay. All right, so there are lessons of that. If you come back and say, look, usually it's for long roads. Guess which your longest road in? The main one coming in. Right. So that's where traffic control might be considered if you have to second it.
The traffic studies were done years ago, and with the density of houses we have in here, we'll never reach the number
of traffic
until you connect it somewhere else.
That's right. That's right. And when you do, it may split the traffic, and then you still don't qualify.
I think Mr. Ford was the traffic guy. Now he's the
still
city
is.
engineer.
It all goes through Gary Ford. I'm going to tell you, when it went to my subdivision, to the Howard and Wood folks, when the report came back, I go, yeah, but I got unit. And they looked at it and said, we can put some mitigation in there. We're just not going to go crazy.
Well, just as a side issue, we put in a speed control sign that shows your speed, a radar sign.
Yeah.
When it used to have a happy face on it, people would slow down to get the happy face. And the city came to us and said, make that go away. It's not within state law. We could put the happy face back there, people would slow down.
For real, psychology makes a difference.
Hey, I asked if we couldn't use the European method, and they looked at me like, what? And that's striping that starts out wide, and then it gets narrow, and as you hit it, it's an optical illusion that makes you go, whoo, I'm going too fast. And they go, no, and I go, and it's cheap, it's paint. I mean, really? We can't do it? Well, the Europeans are doing it. That doesn't mean we will. I mean, they're going to have to curve on Mission. There's no way that sucker's going to be perfect. They'll have to curve. I haven't seen them.
Get a question, ma'am?
Thank you very much for hearing us.
Look, I will call council.
Oh. You need to speak up loud.
Well, thank you very much for hearing us. And I get what you're saying. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's already happened to us before in another property. So if it doesn't happen now, eventually it's going to happen, and it might be worse if it doesn't happen to us. I think right now we have the opportunity, with your help, thank you, to see what is the lesser evil and how can we stop it right now to where we make a decision if it's going to be there versus 5 years, 10 years down the road.
Right.
It's going to be a hell.
Absolutely. I'm obligated to tell them everything you said today. Obligated. It's my fiduciary responsibility as a council. And convey it. Even though I can't vote on it, I have to convey your message clearly and succinctly. Okay? And I'm going to. And I tell everybody on council, I have a meeting this week with city managers in the development department. It will be reiterated there on several sections. Okay? We want your voice to be heard. I never want you to think it's not going to be heard, regardless of what's going on. I'm just a very logical guy that says, how does the machine function? How can it be as successful for you as possible within inside the machine? Because state law does some things, city rules and ordinance does other. How do those come together, and where are the loopholes you get hammered at? Well, supermajority, that is the ultimate control on that side. Having a position of what you will compromise to says, we're not being unreasonable, we just don't want this itty bitty teeny weeny town. Doesn't fit next. We would love it if it was all perfect.
So if the people that are sending in, are they saying what they're allowed, only allowed to say what they want to say?
Thank y'all for coming. Appreciate y'all coming out. Mission Hill grants if you'll stay for about 10 more minutes. We appreciate it.
We want to thank District Councilman for coming and meeting with us.
Yeah, thank you. Look, y'all can call me anytime. I don't, look, I want you to be as satisfied, as close to what we can get you as we can. Okay? Within the guidelines of state and local ordinance. Okay?
Thank you.